Hello humans, and welcome to the Cartridge and Disc Podcast. This is your Gen X gamer here, and right now one of my favorite subjects of all time, the Sega Saturn. That's right, Sega is looking into making a Sega Saturn Mini. Now, if you've been a follower of the show, you guys know that that is my favorite console and what I think is the most beautiful console ever made. You know, it's a perfect form factor. If you wanted to make a retro console now, right, the only thing that's been close to it was the Nintendo PlayStation. You have a cartridge slot, you have a disc slot right there. It embodies what this channel talks about for the most part, right? Cartridge and disc games, right? And that's why I named the channel, you know, the Cartridge and Disc Podcast, the renaming when I had to because of my social media responsibilities. But now this has come up, this is being reported, and let me tell you, there are so many great games for that console. Unfortunately, a lot of them were left in Japan. I'll give you two good examples. Number one being Baroque. The very version of Baroque that we got was quite different than what Japan got. And I'm telling you, if they were ever to release that here, right, it's an Atlas game. Two Atlas games, surprise, surprise, right? The other one being Devil Summoner. But what makes this mini so strong is that there's a lot of games that were actually made by Sega. So the licensing wouldn't even be a problem. The lineup, right? The lineup would be great. One of the strongest games ever, you know, being imported at the time was X-Men Children of the Atom. You know, that was my bucket list. I really wanted to get a collector's edition of that, and I got it from Japan. There's some sort of special edition, comes in a box. But there's some classics in there, guys. There's some classics in there that you can, you know, just go back and look at. That they released that weren't available anywhere else, right? And they were Sega exclusives. Of course, you had a lot of fighters, right? But let's just go down the line, guys. This is not an official list. This is what just comes to mind, right, from Googling stuff and my memory, and trying to do it real quick while I, you know, bring you along in this ride. But I think it's an interesting topic of discussion. And if you guys have any others, right, that I miss, go ahead and put them down below, because I think they're all relevant when it comes to this console, right? Remember, this console was so engineered so well that it took so long for them to crack the code, and even the emulation today is not perfect. You know, to their credit, the Polymega has done a decent job with emulation on this particular console. And we just talked about that remix in the previous video. But anyway, let's talk about Darius Gaiden, for example, would be a great shooter. What about Street Fighter Alpha 2 would be another one. I mean, I'm telling you, there's a lot of bangers here. There is a lot of bangers on this particular one. I mean, there's games that a lot of people don't even hear about, but Power Slave would be one that comes to mind, and Clockwork Knight. I mean, that was impressive. I mean, there's some that we don't have to even, you know, really mention because they just come to mind when you think about the Saturn. Knights would be one of them, right? Panzer Dragoon, right? But here's a great game that didn't get enough recognition at the time, which is Guardian Heroes, right? There's a version of Bomberman on the Saturn that was great. Virtua Fighter 2. Yes, Virtua Fighter 2. What about Sega Saturn Rally Championship? Yeah, Sega Rally Championship. There you go. Let's see here. What else? Radiant Silvergun. There you go. The Panzer Dragoon 2. How about Astal? That was a beautiful game. Shining Force 3. There you go. Die Hard Arcade. That might be a little hard, right? But you know what wouldn't be hard? Fighters Mega Mix, right? X-Men versus Street Fighter you could do. I mean, look, if Arcade 1-Up could get it, they can get it. You know what I'm saying? Princess Crown, yes. Sonic Jam, you know, they can tweak that, modernize it. Man, Shining the Holy Ark, Virtual Cop. I mean, Sonic R, House of the Dead, maybe. You know, these are some titles, you know, that they got over there that we didn't get. But we had Fighting Vipers, I remember. You know, Fighting Vipers was a title. Duke Nukem, right? What else? There was a couple of Mega Mans. Mega Man 8. You know, I'm not a Mega Man person, but I think that was on there. Or Mega Man X4, one of the two. One of the two were on there. You guys can correct me in the comments. But I think that this would be an easy console for these people to make. Sega can make it if they wanted to. I mean, hopefully they won't farm it out to some third party that doesn't know what they're doing, right? Because there's a lot they can do with this console. You know, and the controllers aren't complicated. You know, it's not like you're going to be spending a lot of money on the controllers. And the Sega Saturn controllers were some of the best of the era. You know, the second generation specifically were awesome. And there's so many games from Japan that they could put on there, guys, that's never made it here. JRPGs. I mean, the list could go on and on and on, because remember that the Sega Saturn in Japan was huge. The Sega Saturn in Japan beat the N64 in popularity, hands down, without a question. The N64 was more popular here in America. You know? But this is something that, if they're talking about it, if there are rumblings, it's something they could do. I don't know how big the numbers would be. You know, this would be something that you would have to be, man, on Amazon, you know, I'd probably take the day off from work. That's how much of a degenerate I am. You know, I would take a day off from work just to order it, you know, or make it an exclusive for GameStop. You know, I mean, GameStop is hurting for physical media. That's something they could do, you know, but this thing would sell out, and it would be a success. I mean, everybody knows this. This would be a banger as soon as they release it, and I hope they do, man. I hope these rumors are true, because there are so many games. I just mentioned some of them, you know, off the top of my head in memory, you know, and I'm not, you know, my memory isn't what they used to be, you know, it is not, because I explored my consciousness. I don't want to get the video demonetized. As I used to talk with my, you know, departed friend, the Rambling Man, we used to talk a lot about the ways we expanded our mind in our youth, and you know, that unfortunately that's affects a lot how I remember things now. But you know, what do you guys think? Would you guys buy it? You know, what would be the price point? I mean, I'm thinking this thing's got to be, you know, it would start at 150, but most likely, you know, it would go into the 179 area for sure. Absolutely. And you know what? People would pay it. It would probably be a limited release, and this would be a collectible as soon as it hits the market, man. I mean, I am really hyped for this thing. If they do release it, you know, the Dreamcast, that's another conversation. But I think that the Saturn, because Sega themselves here in America had to do a lot of the games, man. I think it's an easy win for them, and they should put it out. What do you guys think? Well, guys, the only other thing I have left to say is that if they do that, then at least, if most people can't get it, it should be on Nintendo and part of the Sega service. There you go. That's my hot take. Alright guys, tell me what you think. What titles should be on there? You guys let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for following me. I really do appreciate your subscription. Make sure you hit that like button. If you haven't done so, subscribe to the channel, guys. I will catch you on the next one. Take care.